So this is another case study of an LED project. This is for 2 Union Square, which is a building downtown. It's over 1 million square feet, 5-story garage, a little over about 350, 400 fixtures. The baseline condition out there, what was out there was 150 watt high pressure sodiums. The lighting, most of the lighting was on 24 hours a day, not all of it. You can't hear me. Oh, thanks. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So 2 Union Square, large property downtown. The commercial incentive program that we use for large customers. The baseline conditions out there in the garage existing were 150 watt high pressure sodium lights. Most of them were on 24 hours a day. So they were converted to 48 watt LED fixtures with new fixture mounted occupancy sensors. And since the garage was not occupied, or large parts of it were not, much of the time, it created for a good amount of savings for the customer, which enabled them to proceed with the project. So what you see here is one of the LED fixtures. And as you'll note, when we go through lighting slides, lighting's very hard to photograph. And so something that you look at a photo and you think, that's not very exciting, actually can turn out looking great. This is another photo of one component of the project, which when they relit the garage, they changed the lighting layout of some of the fixtures, so they reconfigured it. So in certain places where you had one row of lights down the middle of a parking lane, they separated those, capped them off, and put down 2 fixtures for each one. So it wasn't all a one-for-one fixture change out. And the fixtures grew from about 329 to a little over 500. You were still able to get really good savings by nearly half of what the fixtures used because of the change in the wattage. So this project saved 268,000 kilowatt hours per year, so it was eligible for a $68,000 incentive. It also resulted in much higher levels of lighting and greater visibility. The color rendition of the light was much better than the old high pressure sodium, and the light distribution was much more even because of the reconfiguration. And one component that was an offshoot of this is the loading dock and the loading ramps. Once they had fixtures installed in the bulk of the parking garage, those same fixtures just didn't cover and provide enough light in the loading dock areas, which had a higher ceiling. And so we took those fixtures out of the initial contract and put them into a second phase so that they had some time to find a fixture that would work better, which they did. And it's the same wattage of LED fixture, but it was able to produce a very different light distribution pattern to increase the light levels in the loading dock. So this will save additional energy and net them an additional incentive while still giving them a really effective lighting pattern. And one of the lessons that I want to point out from that is that when you're working particularly with converting to LEDs, which we see a lot of these days, it's really good to test the products first in some way, especially if it's a large or a unique application or installation. It can be difficult to evaluate the new fixture until you actually get it in place and have the customer look at it. So if you need to do that, if you need to test fixtures because of any reason at all, contact your EMA at City Light that you're going to work with and let them know that you want to set up a test. You've got some fixtures from the manufacturer they're letting you borrow for a while, or you're going to buy some so you can get started with the test before you make a decision. Let City Light know. And do start to look towards changing configurations or locations of fixtures as you develop into the market, because part of what LED opens up is a different way of lighting buildings and facilities that hasn't been available before, and that's a very exciting new field. 2 Union Square happened to be a project where we did that conversion originally some 20 years ago or more. So this is a second generation lighting project, which we'll see more and more of as time goes on, and LED penetrates into even the standard linear fluorescent market. You'll see the conversion kits for LED coming out with much lower wattages. As the price falls, there'll be a whole new industry going through a second time around, which is pretty exciting that you can get new products that keep going down and down and down in wattage. And I think that's it. So now is your time for questions?
We do have time for questions. We'll run a mic over. So I'm curious, you mentioned let your EMA know if you're going to be installing sample fixtures. What's the specific objective? Do you guys get involved in lighting design?
We aren't designers, so we're not responsible for any kinds of lighting design. You're the person that's putting it in. You're the one that's going to be responsible for what it looks like and whether it meets requirements. But if you come into this room and you think, well, I really need to change out a couple of these fixtures just to see what they look like, maybe you can disable the ones around that so that you can do that, or maybe you have to effectively do a small portion of the room. But you would want to let City Light know if you needed to kind of make a substantial change. If you're just putting in a row of screw-in LEDs, 6 of them, and you want to see what they look like, you can probably screw them in and take them out, and you can probably get some samples from someone. If you're approaching a project with much higher savings, much more incentive, or for this property, which was a very high-end property where they actually cared quite a lot how the parking garage looked, then you want to work with City Light to say, you know, they want to do this whole section of the corner of the garage in order to be able to know whether it's going to look proper. So you need to set up perhaps a slightly different contract mechanism to let them be able to do that. You might do a small contract first and a larger one later, or break off something that didn't work. But we do try and have some degree of lighting design background, and we have the lighting design lab. So no, we aren't designers. We do make suggestions.
So you're talking about partnering to maximize incentives and, you know, talk about timelines if the scope of the project requires multiple
especially
phases,
if it's a larger project with a greater diversity. If you have 1 or 2 rooms or some garage canopies and you've done them before and you're really comfortable with it, you may not want to bother with that. But if it's an unusual facility, you're not familiar with that type of lighting, or the customer has very careful ideas about what they want to see it look like when it's done, then you might want to think about testing. And as LED develops, the technology is changing so rapidly that it's hard for us to keep up. We try and go around to fairs and trade fairs and work with contractors, but there's so many products these days that you think, wow, I've never seen that before. And it's really different than what I saw last year. So we're all kind of learning.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you.
Long answer, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
More questions?
Oh, we're actually out of time.
Okay.
Sorry.